The WWE Universe was left reeling after a shocking betrayal that shattered the foundations of the OG bloodline. When Paul Heyman, long the mastermind behind Roman Reigns' dominance, unexpectedly aligned himself with Seth Rollins, it wasn't just a strategic shift, it was a brutal act of treason. Roman Reigns, the tribal chief and unchallenged leader of the bloodline, found himself isolated and wounded in a way fans had never seen before. In a rare and deeply emotional moment, Roman stepped into the ring alone, stripped of his usual armor and entourages, to deliver a heartfelt plea, not as a champion or a ruler, but as a man broken by betrayal, yet determined to fight for what truly matters: family. His raw honesty stunned the OG bloodline and WWE fans alike, signaling a turning point that could redefine loyalty, legacy, and power in the WWE Universe. The question now is, where does the bloodline go from here? The betrayal that shook an empire, Paul Heyman's ultimate treason. The saga began months earlier at WrestleMania, an event that rippled through WWE like a violent earthquake. Paul Heyman, the mastermind behind Roman's reign of dominance, executed the unthinkable. In front of a global audience, Heyman betrayed the tribal chief, aligning himself with Seth Rollins. The impact was brutal. This was not just a shock to the bloodline, it shook the entire WWE landscape to its core. Heyman's betrayal wasn't a mere plot twist. It was a dagger plunged into the heart of an empire they had all built together. Years of loyalty, strategic brilliance, and unyielding power plays had forged Roman Reigns into an unstoppable juggernaut. But Heyman flipped the script with a cold, calculated precision. Why? Was it revenge for perceived slights, a desperate grab for relevance, or the ultimate act of treason by a man who decided the empire he once built must crumble? Roman's response was silence. The silent return. A king without his crown, Roman Reigns returned to the arena with no fire blazing in his eyes, no booming rage echoing through his voice. Instead, he arrived cloaked in a quiet, thunderous sadness, one that struck deeper than any spear or Superman punch ever could. The arena plunged into darkness. No thunderous entrance music, no pyrotechnics illuminating the stage, just a single cold spotlight piercing the void and focusing on the ring. Roman walked out alone, stripped of his Universal Championship belt, without Paul Heyman by his side, and absent were the loyal Usos who had once flanked him like warriors protecting their king. The tribal chief stood alone. The crowd didn't erupt with cheers or chants. Instead, they watched in solemn awe. Every step Roman took heavy with weight and meaning. Every second he stood in that lonely spotlight stretched on, thick with emotion. And then, finally, he spoke. The heartbreak of a tribal chief, a man torn apart. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Roman Reigns spoke, not as a champion, not as a leader, but as a man crushed by loss. His voice was soft, almost trembling, and it pierced the hushed arena like a whispered confession. "I don't need Paul Heyman," he said slowly, his gaze cutting through the camera lens like a spear, aimed at every member of the bloodline watching from wherever they were. "But I need my family. I need you." The crowd gasped. The raw honesty was something no one had seen from Roman in years. The dominant tribal chief was peeling back his armor, exposing a heart battered by betrayal but still beating strong. Jey Uso, who had walked away after years of emotional turmoil, sat with his arms crossed, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. His jaw clenched so tightly it seemed he might explode, the weight of guilt and regret almost visible as he wrestled with memories of Roman's unwavering support when no one else stood by him. A crumbling dynasty. The lone figure in the spotlight. Roman's voice began quietly, then grew stronger, yet never rising to the command tones fans were used to. He stood tall in the center of the ring, a lone figure in a crumbling dynasty. His usual aura of invincibility was gone. Now he looked small, not weak, but vulnerable, stripped of the armor that had defined him for years. He was no longer the tribal chief. He was simply Roman Reigns, the son, the brother, the cousin, the leader of a fractured family. The camera panned to the front row. Jey Uso sat with unreadable expressions. Solo Sikoa's stone face betrayed an ocean of conflict. Jimmy Uso lingered in the distance, his emotions locked away in a guarded shell. The tension was palpable, an unspoken storm brewing beneath the surface. "If walking away makes you happy," Roman continued, his voice cracking with a blend of pain and resolve, "then go. But know this, no matter what, you'll always be my blood." The arena was enveloped in silence, no commentary, no distractions, just the crushing weight of those words sinking deep into every soul present. The human behind the tribal chief, pain, forgiveness, and power. The WWE Universe has seen Roman Reigns in many forms, the big dog, the tribal chief, the head of the table, but never like this. In one of the most emotionally charged promos in recent history, Roman stood alone under a single spotlight, stripped of titles, allies, and even his once ironclad aura of dominance. There were no chants to carry him, no music to signal his arrival, only silence and the slow, deliberate steps of a man with a burden too heavy to hide. Roman's voice trembled as he addressed the crowd, his words slow, deliberate, and aching with vulnerability. This wasn't about championships anymore. This wasn't about who sat at the head of the table. This was about family, loyalty, and betrayal, the very fabric of the bloodline that had been torn apart at WrestleMania when Paul Heyman, the brain behind Roman's dominance, chose to side with Seth Rollins. The bloodline's silent reckoning, torn between family and duty. While Roman poured his heart out in the ring, the camera panned to the crowd where members of the original bloodline, Jey Uso, Solo Sikoa, and even a distant Jimmy Uso, watched in silence. The tension was so thick it was almost tangible. Jey's fists were clenched, his jaw tight, caught in the emotional tug-of-war between guilt and loyalty. This was the same man who had once declared Roman his tribal chief, only to walk away when the burden of blind loyalty became too much. Solo Sikoa, the silent enforcer, sat stone-faced, but for the first time his cold stare faltered. His eyes showed conflict, a war within. A soldier without a commander, a brother torn between what's right and what's expected. Behind him, Jimmy Uso remained emotionally distant, but his very presence signaled that something still tethered him to the bloodline, to the man in the ring pouring his soul out. Backstage, Paul Heyman stood by a monitor, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. The rebirth of Roman Reigns, a man with nothing to lose. The arena erupted, not in sympathy but in belief. The fans weren't seeing a fallen champion. They were witnessing a rebirth. Roman Reigns had been humbled, yes, but not broken. Instead, the man left standing in that ring was more dangerous than ever. No longer bound by ego, power, or the weight of expectations, this Roman was raw, honest, and fueled by something far more powerful than gold: redemption. This raised immediate and monumental questions for WWE's future. Would Jey Uso find it in his heart to return, not to follow, but to stand beside Roman? Would Solo Sikoa, whose loyalty had always seemed conditional, choose blood over ambition? Could Jimmy find purpose again within the family? And most intriguingly, what role would Heyman play next? Was his allegiance to Rollins permanent, or would he feel the pull of unfinished loyalty to the man he once called his tribal chief? What lies ahead? A WWE landscape, forever changed. No one in the WWE Universe knows exactly what comes next. But one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again. Roman Reigns' transformation has sent shockwaves through WWE's very foundation. He's not the tribal chief anymore. He's something more. A man not defined by power, but by purpose. A man fighting not just for victory, but for his soul, and the soul of his fractured family. Is the bloodline truly finished? Or is it being reforged, stronger, more honest, and more united by choice, not command? That's the question that now lingers in every arena, in every promo, in every glance between these once unbreakable brothers. What we witnessed wasn't just the fall of a dynasty, it was the rise of a revolution. Roman Reigns may no longer wear the crown, but he has claimed something far greater, the heart of the people, and perhaps, soon enough, the hearts of his family once again. One thing is clear. Roman Reigns has changed the entire game, and the world is still watching.